We're in the middle of the biggest energy transition since the Industrial Revolution. The COVID-19 pandemic is accelerating our move away from fossil fuels as price tags of renewables, particularly solar, come down. It is now possible to actually imagine a carbon-neutral world run on clean energy, but there is still a long way to go. Climate change doesn't care what the markets think, and the science, well, that's still the same. We must halve global greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 if we're to have any hope of reaching net zero by 2050 and avoiding the worst effects of global warming. So the change, while it is happening, needs to happen quicker. In this programme, we'll be looking at two of the solutions that have a part to play in that transformation. On the Orkney Islands in the UK, scientists are working with one of clean energy's holy grails, green hydrogen. And in Norway, a carbon-neutral data centre is using the force of nature to power our digital lives.
The global demand for energy is increasing, but burning fossil fuels is polluting and it's warming the planet with devastating impacts for life on Earth. While renewable energy from wind, sun and sea is cheaper than ever, but it's intermittent and it's difficult to store.
But a fuel of the future is emerging, which could prove fundamental to decarbonising the global economy.
I've come to the Orkney Islands off the north coast of the UK, where a network of scientists and researchers are proving that a missing link in the next renewable energy revolution might be found in the simplest and most abundant element, hydrogen.
The universe is about 73% hydrogen, mainly occurring as gas. But on Earth, most hydrogen is contained in water. It's the H in H2O. After it's generated from water, it can be used as a fuel. It powers cars, buses, and even spacecraft. But in order to extract it from water, you need electricity. And when that's produced using fossil fuels, it contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. In Orkney, known as the Energy Islands, scientists have discovered how to produce green hydrogen using renewable power generated by wind farms and tidal turbines. It could be a game changer.
Oh, wow.
I'm meeting Adele Lidderdale, who's a hydrogen project manager and was brought up on Orkney.
Just living on the island, we have this sense of self-sufficiency. We need to do things for ourselves. We can't just wait around, and that really gives us resilience as an island community.
We've come to Chapman Island, one of Orkney's 13 inhabited islands, to see how they produce hydrogen.
It's kind of a juxtaposition of a small, quiet island with quite a high-tech energy project.
This turbine is owned by local residents and produces more energy than the local grid can handle. So the excess power is used in hydrogen production.
I'm no scientist, but I could see on the sign there, it says explosive compressed gas.
Yep.
What is actually happening behind this fence? What's going on in these boxes?
So it's a working energy production site, which is why we're standing outside.
What's the connection between wind and hydrogen?
We have the wind turbine going round here today. When it reaches a certain meters per second, we switch that energy production over to produce hydrogen.
These metal boxes contain the key piece of machinery, an electrolyser that generates hydrogen gas. An electric current flows through the electrolyser, causing water to break down into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is then collected and compressed.
So the electrolyser just takes normal drinking water, it uses the energy from the wind turbine, it splits the H2O water into hydrogen and oxygen. We capture the hydrogen for use for energy, and the oxygen at the moment is just vented into atmosphere.
So you're rediverting
Yes.
that wind energy into hydrogen?
That's right, yeah.
As storing it?
And storing the hydrogen.
It's transported by trailer and used all over Orkney, some in domestic heating, but mostly in commercial vehicles and ferries. In the trailers, the hydrogen is stored under pressure at 184 times its original density. And that's a lot of energy. I'm meeting with James Ferguson, a specialist in hydrogen storage. The highly inflammable gas is locked away in compounds on the quayside.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, gosh.
So one of the big advantages of hydrogen is that it's a kind of option for seasonal energy storage. And that's when we want to store a lot of energy over months. So we know that in the UK during the winter it's very blowy, it's very windy. If we go to a wind turbine based energy system, we're going to have a lot more generated in the winter than we need. And so we can capture that and store it in the form of hydrogen and then keep it until the summer when we don't have any wind blowing but we're still using energy.
So how is hydrogen used as a fuel? Well, James has a rather natty way of demonstrating this with a toy car.
That looks about, that's about 20 mils?
He shows me how to produce hydrogen with a mini electrolyzer.
So if we just wait a moment, we're going to generate some hydrogen, we're going to get a build-up.
An electric current passing through the water forms hydrogen bubbles.
We've now got some gas stored here that we didn't have before. So now I'm going to take my cables round here, and you can see now that the gases are flowing into the fuel cell, and then that's going to allow us to generate electricity, which makes the car go.
That is absolutely brilliant, isn't it? Look at that.
Someone better catch it.
The principle that powers the fuel cell in James's toy car is the same when scaled up to power a fleet of 5 council vans on the island.
Wow, it's completely silent.
Oh, completely silent.
Wow.
You can sometimes hear the compressor from the hydrogen when it kicks in. You'll hear wee tss.
Wow.
But that's all you'll hear.
David Hannon is working with the council to expand its use of hydrogen technology.
So for a long time we were talking about electric vehicles as being the future of green transportation. What do you get out of a hydrogen-powered vehicle that you wouldn't get out of an electric vehicle?
This is also a battery. It runs off the battery, but then the hydrogen is used to basically extend the range on it. So if you're either traveling long distances, you can potentially double that range.
And there's another advantage, it's quick to refuel.
With an electric battery, you might take from half an hour to 8 hours to charge your battery, whereas this is pretty much instantaneous, talking a couple of minutes.
Normally we'd expect to see an exhaust sticking out the back of a van like this.
Yeah, and as you can see, there's no exhaust here. And the same as any other electric vehicle. Obviously we've got hydrogen, but the only sort of emissions of that is water vapor.
It's water vapor?
Atmosphere, yeah.
Right, wow.
All right.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
He just whispers off, doesn't he? It's great to hear how it seems to be growing all the time, and there's an awareness of the importance of this kind of network or this ecology of energies.
When you live on an archipelago, another important form of transport is the ferry. Orkney Ferry Company operates 74 different connections, and there are more than 20,000 sailings each year, but the fuel used in shipping is badly polluting.
Hi, David.
For David Hibbert, who works with the ferry company, green hydrogen is part of his plan to clean up the operation. And it all happens below deck.
Okay, I have no idea what we're getting into here, but here we go. Oh wow, bowels of the ship, wow. So what are we looking at here?
These cylinders contain 5 kilos of hydrogen. That's equivalent to 20 litres of fuel.
What are you using with this hydrogen?
The hydrogen is stored in this system will run an auxiliary generator engine. Now, the auxiliary generator engine supplies the steering, the safety systems and the lights and the heating and the accommodation.
And so do you see a time when in the future hydrogen will be used to drive all of the ship's operation systems, including propulsion?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a stepping stone within 2 years.
Within 2 years?
Yeah. We're starting obviously on small scale shipping, but the steps are already established.
Vans and ferries powered by green hydrogen are just part of the picture in Orkney. Pioneering research into how the fuel could play a global role in transport and beyond is happening here at the Orkney Research and Innovation Campus. One of the most important projects is in aviation. In a normal year, nearly 40 million flights worldwide result in heavy CO2 emissions. A search for an alternative fuel is urgent. One company collaborating with scientists in Orkney is Zero Avia. I contact director Sergei Kiselev, who's excited about their first 15-minute-long hydrogen test flight.
It was the culmination of almost 3 years of research, and frankly, it was as if delivering a baby. The full team was so relieved and so excited at the same time.
I know that you guys are planning to fly here with one of your hydrogen-powered planes.
The final flight of our HyFlyer 1 project will be taking place from Orkney. The Orkney is famous for its green hydrogen.
Can you give us a timescale of when you think that we will see passenger planes in the sky running on hydrogen?
Of course, the technology is in its infancy, but I personally believe that in about 15 to 20 years, there will be a lot of jets flying using green hydrogen, and this is truly exciting.
So if we're going to rise to the challenges of our energy economy, our future transportation needs, it means embracing a range of solutions. And I think what they're doing here in Orkney is proving that green hydrogen can be part of the answer.
Green hydrogen is beginning to take off. It's a key part of the EU's plans to become the world's first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. And new projects are being developed in Chile, Saudi Arabia, the United States. Yes, there is still a way to go before green hydrogen is proven to be scalable and cost-effective, but it is gaining traction. And it's one of a number of current trends that herald a world free of fossil fuels.
There is definitely a new power system and a new energy system emerging in front of our eyes, whether we look at power generation and distribution or whether we look at transport. There is no doubt that we are in the middle of the most consequential transition in the energy space that we have seen in 100 years. It is a very exciting moment. It's also a nerve-wracking moment, because we know that if we don't get to half emissions by 2030, it will be too late to do anything substantial about climate change. This is our last window of opportunity to bend the curve of emissions and get on to a different track. A green society would be a society that has 100% clean energy. That energy would be decentralized, cheap, ubiquitous. We would be able to provide power to every single home on this planet. We currently have 800 million people who do not have access to power, meaning they're in abject poverty. By moving over to 100% clean energy, decentralized, we can make energy ubiquitous and we can bring those who are under the line of poverty over that line. A green society would be an economy that has smart grids, that has storage available to all the renewable energy generation sources. It would also be a society in which there is efficient and clean transport. Passenger vehicles would offer transport as a service, not being a possession of any individual. And heavy transport would be using clean fuels. And finally, cities would be clean, quiet, because we would have put the internal combustion engine into the museum, and cities would be organized into smaller communities around food and energy. At the beginning of the most decisive decade in the history of humankind, it behooves all of us to understand that this has been challenging and will continue to be challenging, but we can do this. We can address climate change in a timely fashion. We can avert the worst disasters of climate change, and in so doing, we can bring a much better quality of life for all citizens of this planet, and certainly for the ecosystems upon which we depend.
People across the planet are spending an increasing amount of time online, from work meetings and catching up with friends to movie streaming and shopping. We are now more reliant than ever on platforms which generate and store data. But this data doesn't just vanish into thin air. It comes at a very real environmental cost. Everything we do online passes through data centers, which consume huge amounts of energy and emit nearly as much CO2 as the airline industry. I'm in Norway to see how one centre is harnessing the energy of these fjords to store our digital information without a heavy carbon footprint. This is the famous tourist attraction and photo hotspot Preikestolen in Norway. It draws hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. I'm curious to find out what people know about the data all these photos generate. So when you take a selfie, it lands somewhere. Have you ever imagined where that could be?
I think the first time I will imagine is now when you're asking. I haven't been thinking about it. No.
I have no idea. I send it to Google, I guess.
In the cloud?
In the cloud. And do you know what the cloud is?
A big storage place?
Like myself, most people only have vague ideas of where all our data is kept. I've come to University of Stavanger to meet an expert on data storage and find out where our selfies end up.
The photo itself will be stored in the memory of their phone. And then if you share the photo or you want to back up the photo into the cloud, it will end up in some data center remotely. It could be in Europe, it could be also in a remote site across the Atlantic. And those data will be accumulated in those data centers. And those volumes force us to have a bigger data center. So there are problems for sustainability, how long or how much data we have to store them.
In recent years, many of us have been moving into the digital realm, and even more so under the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's great to see you here from a sunny South Africa.
Our online habits take a heavy toll on the environment. A typical search which passes through data centers, processing and storing information requires as much energy as illuminating a 60-watt light bulb for 17 seconds. That doesn't sound like much until you realize Google alone processes 3.5 billion searches a day. Around 1% of electricity globally is consumed by data centers, many of which provide remote storage facilities, or what is also known as the cloud. It's estimated that in 10 years, as our data network grows, almost 7% of all electricity will be used just to power and cool huge servers, preserving everything from billions of family photos to big data on space travel. So where and how you store your data can make all the difference. And Norway is ahead of the game on this, since it's powered nearly 100% by renewable energy, most of which comes from hydropower. I'm on my way to Rennesø, an island near Stavanger. I've heard they have an old military storage, but instead of storing torpedoes and warheads, they now store billions of bytes of information from all over the world. The underground Green Mountain Data Center, which opened in 2013, is carbon neutral. It's run on hydropower from water reservoirs up the mountains. So Christian, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Oh, wow. This is like being in a James Bond film. I can see that this is very secure.
This is very secure.
Wow, thank you.
So this is how it looked when we took over the site. Here is empty space, but it will not be empty forever. As soon as we grow, this will be a data center as well. So now we're entering what people refer to as the cloud. This is where our customers are running their servers, storage equipment.
So what kind of information is stored here?
It could be anything from storage of pictures to national critical infrastructure. It could be kids at home doing their lecture online.
So many people, when they think about the cloud, they think out in the open air, they think white and fluffy. But actually the cloud is metallic and it's black and it's noisy.
It's black and it's noisy and it consumes a lot of power and generates a lot of heat.
To see how the center manages this, it's a quick ride down the corridor.
Whoa!
where in the fuse room, this is where all the green energy flows through into the data hall.
So this is basically the giant engine of this data center.
The consumption in this data center with all the different data halls consumes the power equal to about 20,000 households.
While this may seem a lot, some of the biggest data centers consume as much power as a city of 1 million people.
Every click you do on your device generates activity inside a data center somewhere. If it's in Norway, it's green and renewable.
As well as only using green energy, this data center is reducing its impact on the environment by cooling its servers using cold water from the nearby deep saltwater inlet or fjord. So whilst most data centers use around 40% of their energy to cool servers, which would otherwise reach 100 degrees Celsius in minutes, this data center gets its cooling free from nature.
So this is where we're producing the cold water used to cool the cloud inside the mountain.
Cold seawater from the fjord enters the basin next to the data center. This water, which is constantly 8 degrees Celsius, is then pumped up through the heat exchanger, cooling down separate water pipes that circulate through the data center. The warmed up seawater then exits back into the fjord at around 20 degrees Celsius, where it quickly cools down again. The Green Mountain Data Center in Norway is unique because of the fjord cooling the servers and the way in which they've repurposed an old site. But all over Scandinavia, tech giants like Facebook, Google and Microsoft are building huge data centers running on hydro and wind power. In fact, investment in Nordic data centers is set to double by 2025.
Welcome. Thank you to our big speedboat, fully electric.
I'm meeting Siri Kelvig, a local meteorologist and green investor, who is confident this trend will continue. So this is where the hydropower is?
Yes, the old Ferry hydro station. It's actually the world's longest, 4,444 steps.
Ooh.
Over 100 years old.
Amazing.
So be careful.
So I can see that it's old from this old train here.
Here you see the old pipe coming down from the mountain. So all the water is just flowing high speed in the pipe, creating electricity when it hits the turbine. So you have to use what nature gives you. So in Norway we have incredible rain. Other country has sun and yeah, we also have wind, but here it's rain that gives us the electricity.
Scandinavia will be important to the world's data storage.
I think Scandinavia will be very important for future data storage. It's a cold climate. You can use the cold fjord to cool down the data center. We have the hydropower to run data centers. However, I think we also need to be even more responsible and take action, each and one of us. And for instance, if we are talking about data storage, we need to be concerned about how many selfies we need to take, how many emails and snaps and text messages we need to send.
Though we can't see it, our use of digital devices has an impact on the world around us. This is only set to grow. Nearly 60% of the world's population is already online, and around 1 million new users sign up each day. As our reliance on data expands, we need to find green ways to manage it. Here in Norway, I've seen how this can be done. And I think we really need to learn from examples like this and make sure that we balance our modern lives with what this planet can sustain.
With so many of us stuck at home during the pandemic, it's been perhaps hard to see that the world really has been given a golden opportunity for a green recovery. Commitments are happening all over the place as nations, businesses, cities, investors pledge net zero carbon targets by 2050. But right now, 2030 is the key year. That's just under a decade to determine the future of the planet. Around the world, we're already seeing glimpses of the green society that could be ours. Last year, renewables overtook fossil fuels as the main source of electricity in Europe and the UK. In Australia, there's a solar boom. Panels are on rooftops of 1 in 4 homes. The Ouarzazate solar complex in Morocco is only in its first phase, and it's already producing enough energy to power the city of Marrakesh twice over. And 60% of monthly car sales in Norway are electric. Diesel cars will be banned there in 2025. The solutions are already there. They just need to go global to make a real difference, and for us to have that chance at a clean, green and prosperous future.